Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Anime Blade. Today I'm going to talk about top 10 villains in anime ever. Hope you like it. Let's get into the video.
羽ばたいたら戻らないと言った
Number 10. All for One. All for One is a subtle, sadistic, and malevolent man who likes to rule from the shadows and enjoys himself at the expense of people before discarding them. In the past, All for One helped people in exchange for servitude. Once they could no longer follow his orders, All for One would callously abandon them, and his followers purged those who defied his will. Taking advantage of the chaotic era caused by the uprising of quirks, All for One offered people anything they wanted as long as they followed him, including choice and power to those who had none, where he would take quirks from those who didn't want them and gave quirks to those who wished for strength, all as a means to gather numbers and conduct his schemes through other people. He masked his true intentions by claiming that he just wanted to help restore order and balance to society. He exhibits extreme megalomania and even traits of an outright god complex, comparing himself to the demon lord he read in comic books. He also relished his total power over Japan and saw himself as a higher being. He would steal the most powerful quirks during his rise to power and crush anyone who stood in his way. He also displays signs of kleptomania, claiming that he can't resist stealing a powerful quirk when the opportunity presents itself. That's why I believe he deserves to be number 10. Number 9. Crollo Lucifer. Crollo is calm, intelligent, and charismatic, as he seems to be a born leader and able to hold the troop together despite the volatile personalities of its members. While he is a very capable strategist, Crollo is also very confident in his own fighting abilities as well as in those of the other members of the Spider. He always has at least 2 people with him, which is why Hisoka found it so difficult to fight him. After he has admired the items that he targeted and acquired, Crollo sells them all. It is also stated that Crollo likes antique books. Crollo shows no fear of his own death, even anticipating it. Melody stated that his heartbeat sounded as if he was happy living alongside death. To Crollo, the troop is more important than his own life. He once stated that the survival of the group comes before the well-being of the leader, stressing that the head of the spider is just another limb that can be sacrificed for the survival of the whole. For me, I prefer him as a villain more than King of Ants Meruem. Number 8. Sukuna. Sukuna is selfish, cold-hearted, immortal, and exceptionally sadistic. When he was reincarnated shortly after Yuji ingested his finger, he commented, implying the slaughter of women and children and likening them to maggots crawling around. Due to his immense power, he rarely cares about the consequences of his actions, even if these affect his host, Yuji Itadori. In fact, he frequently taunts and insults Yuji, calling him a brat and even laughing at or enjoying Yuji's despair on multiple occasions. Sukuna is aware of his immense power and is quite arrogant about it, brutalizing a finger-bearer while being patronizing and proclaiming his superiority over it. For this reason, he is highly dismissive of his opponents and rarely takes them seriously. However, these brutish traits are not to be confused for stupidity. Sukuna is highly intelligent and manipulative, taking Yuji's body hostage by tearing out his heart to force him into a binding vow. Let's get to the next villain. Number 7. Father. Father is menacing, dark, and foreboding, though he can have traces of humanity as, during his first meeting with the Elric brothers and Ling Yao, Father shows a somewhat comical, lighter side to his personality, similar to that of Hohenheim, but almost immediately after switches back to his very serious demeanor. Although this change may have been due to the presence of his greed within him. He is also narcissistic, callous, merciless, pitiless, egotistical, megalomaniacal, deeply selfish, and believes that everyone around him are nothing but tools to be used as part of his plans. The only exceptions to this may be his 7 homunculos children, as Hohenheim had stated during their battle that one of the reasons he had created them was because he wanted a family of his own, hence his title of Our Father, a fact which annoys him but which he also does not deny. He is a great villain with a unique character, thus he deserves to be number 7. Number 6. Frieza. Unlike most primary antagonists, Frieza displays a civilized and refined demeanor, talking with a regal and eloquent nature. He even utilizes the Keigo dialect in the Japanese versions, which utilizes exceptionally respectful and formal phraseology. In the original and remastered dubs for Dragon Ball Z, while his polite demeanor is somewhat retained, such as his quipping when threatening the Nameks in his introduction that he neglected his manners and should have added, please, to his threat to them, it also ends up downplayed by emphasizing his more brutal nature. He tends to handle most situations with a systematic approach. He commonly utilizes dark humor, making twisted jokes and tasteless mockery of his foes before killing them. Frieza is fully aware of his reputation for brutality and makes no effort to deny it, but instead revels in it as evidenced by his introduction to the Namekians. Likewise, he has shown great anger at the idea of his cruel deeds being undone, such as the revival of all his previous victims from the Dragon Balls. Frieza can be best summed up as an intelligent, composed, for the most part, yet extraordinarily sadistic and completely heartless sociopath. His Final Form's character biography in Dragon Ball, Raging Blast 2 states that Frieza has unparalleled cruelty. He has even been commonly referred to as the evilest guy in Universe 7. In Cooler's Revenge, Goku, when condemning Cooler, noted that Frieza was filled with hatred. For me, he is one of the best villains at all. Number 5. Dio. Dio is consistently manipulative and violently domineering, and has repeatedly shown a lack of conscience and empathy. Dio's most recognizable characteristics are his boundless ambition and his love of power. Abused by his father and having lived in the most miserable living conditions, Dio set for himself the goal of becoming the richest, then the most powerful being on Earth. To do so, Dio used anything or anyone that he could in order to further his goals, disregarding any kind of morality that would restrain the range of actions available to him. Using either manipulation, seduction, or plain violence, Dio constantly sought to become more and more powerful. Dio enjoys being in a position of power and has repeatedly stated how great he felt being in a dominating position. On the contrary, Dio never tolerated that someone could stand up to him or equal him in power, and was enraged and deeply disturbed at the thought several times. Naturally, Dio is an incredibly selfish person, only looking over his own interest and overlooking those of others at best, trampling them on the ground at worst. Due to his composed nature, Dio can and will manipulate and take what he can from all sorts of people, using any method, as long as the person suits his present desires because he is primarily interested in their capabilities. Dio is the type who is incapable of loving another person wholeheartedly. The only people he can be said to have held some type of affection for were Jonathan Joestar and Enrico Pucci. Dio recognizing Jonathan's worth as equal to his own, and having been friends with Pucci. Still, Dio stole the former's body and his friendship with the latter was proven nonetheless beneficial of a grander plan to further himself. Number 4. Yugami Light. Light is an unfeeling sociopath who is only driven by his immense hatred of criminals and is ready to do anything in order to become nothing less of a living deity. He has a self-centered personality, as he created the identity of Kira in order to lead a cult devoted to himself, even though his followers were unaware of him being their savior. He even planned to kill unhealthy or lazy people once he became a god in order to build a strong, disciplined utopian society based on a eugenics ideology, even though he did not hold supremacist views. He is an extremely clever, psychopathic, and sly master manipulator who can easily act as an innocent and friendly individual in public who would never kill someone, while secretly killing dozens or hundreds of people each night. He was able to convince Misa that he cared about her and that he was grateful for everything that she'd done for him when he only thought of her as a pawn which he'd kill once she outlived her usefulness. He was also able to fool Takada, a much more clever woman, into being his queen, and thinking that he loved her, when it turns out, like Misa, he only thought of her as a pawn. As seen, he killed her without hesitation when the opportunity arose to kill Mello and to prevent her from revealing any secrets about Kira. A criminal mastermind, he often elaborated unbelievably complicated schemes to compensate for his lack of henchmen, involving pretty much nearly everyone around him. He is also shown to be a sadist. Though he is not explicitly aroused by the act of giving death, he is sometimes shown smiling devilishly, hinting at his vicious tendencies. Such an instance is seen when he kills Naomi. After she prepares to commit suicide, Light mockingly tells her that his father's cell phone is available while smiling, solely doing this for pleasure. He also could barely contain his laughter during his final confrontation with Nier when he thought that everyone in the room would die, demonstrating the sadistic pleasure he took in their deaths and his would-be victory. He is also shown to be delusional in his quest, believing himself to be doing everything in the name of justice and justifying all of the deaths of criminals, police, even his closest allies such as Takada, as necessary to complete his goals and change the rotten world. When Riot claims that even after all the world's criminals are dead, Light would be the last criminal left, to which the teenager rebuked and viewed as ridiculous. I believe he deserves to be number 4 as villain. And before we get to top 3, I hope you guys to subscribe to my channel for more anime videos. Now let's get to top 3. Number 3. Aizen. Aizen is completely calm and cold, having a very polite and knowledgeable manner about him and rarely showing any signs of alarm. He often tries to make small talk with his enemies so as to anger them. He has an extremely cruel, selfish, dangerously manipulative nature, caring nothing for any of his subordinates since he only cares about himself, and to him, they are all just pawns for him to use. He states that he doesn't have any morals, saying they just restrict his capabilities. He will stop at nothing to complete his plans and thinks of long and complex, as well as somewhat convoluted, plans. He often toys with his subordinates and controls his forces through respect, intimidation, fear and mind games, with only Jin being able to figure out Aizen's emotions. Aizen's objective is to overthrow the Spirit King and states that he seeks to stand in the heavens and end the unbearable vacancy on the world's throne. After mastering the Hogyoku, Aizen seems to have become less cautious in battle and has more of a severe superiority complex. He does not think through his moves as much and believes that he is above Shinigami and Hollows. His intelligence and attitude make Aizen easily angered when he is fighting something he does not understand. The most fearsome trait of Aizen is his tremendous intellect. He is well versed in the history, strategy, and tactics of Soul Society, and is privy to knowledge unknown to many. He has proven himself very crafty and a cunning man since his public betrayal of Soul Society. He can deceive and manipulate others around him in different ways for a variety of purposes. For years, he convinced everyone around him he was a kind-hearted man with the best intentions for Soul Society while performing horrific actions. He has proven himself to be a flawless and flexible tactician, adjusting seamlessly to any given situation, if not planning out events well in advance. He understands the strengths, weaknesses and mannerisms of his enemies, and creates strategies to achieve victory. Number 2. Uchiha Madara. Madara's most defining trait is his monumental ego. He is an extremely egocentric, manipulative and conceited man who cares only about might and skills, which shows as he belittles everyone he deems weaker, including the immensely powerful Kage and the formidable Kurama. The only one he respects is Hashirama Senju, whom he admired immensely but grew to hate fiercely. His ego seems at best justifiable, given that he was able to defeat the 5 Kage with ease, and even took down an entire battalion with little to no effort. Madara is a staunch and dependable battle lover who lives and breathes to fight, which he calls dancing. However, he only involves himself in battles he deems challenging, going as far as to keep his foes alive as long as he is having fun. On the other hand, he will slaughter mercilessly those who do not interest him or worse. Although he never bothers fighting at full strength, he shows off his powerful techniques for no other reason than that he can. Madara is cruel, merciless, and cold-hearted, with a macabre sense of humor. He cannot stand being surpassed, and displays an obsession in settling his score with Hashirama. Growing in a time of war made him highly warmongering, aggressive, malicious and sadistic. He is so passionate about battle, that the smell, sight and taste of his own blood is enough to arouse him. He hated the Senju so much that he was unable to ever conceive the possibility of an armistice. He was persuaded that their offers of friendship concealed attempts to subdue his clan and sought to maintain hatred against everyone's wishes. His disregard for the welfare of anyone around him has seen him commit some fairly horrific deeds, such as manipulating events to crush Obito's spirit and dismembering both allies and enemies so he can replace missing body parts. Number 1. Johann Liebert. Johann can be best described as an entity of pure evil, heavily allegorical to the Antichrist and the Beast. His wanton cruelty and depthless malice do not appear to be humanized by traits or drives such as hatred, vengeance, lust, a point to prove, or even sadism. Being fully aware of his nature and devoid of any need to justify himself, his actions are about as reasonless, emotionless, and nihilistic as he is, thus possibly rendering his evil as literally pure and undiluted as can be, given his lack of any discernible gain from it or even a consistent identity. It is perhaps for this reason that he earns such condemnations as monster, devil, vampire, alien, and for which Schuwald claims to have seen hell itself in his eyes. The clear psychopathic tendencies he exhibits as a child, along with the hellish fate he inflicts upon the child experimenting orphanage Kinderheim 511, even prior to most of his past traumas, clearly prove that he is far from a victim of circumstance, given the premeditated and calculated murders of his foster families. A former director of said orphanage, Hartmann, admits himself that not even such an inhumane place could have crafted a masterpiece like Johann. His most consistent belief is that all life is insignificant, equal only in death. Once again, like the Antichrist, Johann masks his vileness and coldness with a persuasive, unfailing veneer of compassion and politeness, and bears an aura of perfection. When approaching others, he is almost angelic in both appearance and behavior, possibly also paralleling Lucifer himself before his fall. Schuwald, before falling victim to Johann's true colors, even describes him as being not of this world due to his apparent myriad of favorable traits. He is an extremely intelligent, patient, and methodical chess master who is always 5 steps ahead, and his unprecedented prowess for manipulation allows him to use even the most uncompromising criminals to his advantage and corrupt them further. whom he invariably disposes of once their utility expires. He is the pure evil in whole anime. And now I think this is the end of our video, guys. Have a good day.